whenever it says go live, I guess for life.
Welcome to the epicenter of sports and entertainment. This is The Rude Dog Show. Now, here's your host, Rudy Reyes.
Wrong direction. Got to go the right direction. We're on the right direction.
Yes,
we're on the right
turn
path.
Around DeAndre Swift. You got to get that counter attack, the ISO up the middle.
If you don't get the ISO, then you're in search of something else, and it's not football, and you're on the wrong channel. The wrong channel. Not the right one. The wrong one.
The wrong one could be getting a tackle for a loss, maybe even a fumble lost as well on your stat sheet if you're not here live at the Rude Dog Show.
Or better yet, a punt, a butt pump. Is that what it is? A butt punt, as we've seen yesterday in the end zone by the Miami Dolphins. Was that a butt punt? Try to say that 10 times fast. This is Rudy Reyes, joined by Chris Ransom here on the Rude Dog Show, live on today's California, live on today's Canada, live on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. You name it, we're on it. This is the metaverse. And, of course, we know this is the Rude Dog Show. I'm your host. Thanks for joining. Tonight, we have a special guest. Chris Ransom joins us from Draft Utopia. We're going to get into naming conventions and all that good business at the end of the show. So make sure you stay tuned in for that one. We're going to try to make this a regular thing, depending on how this show goes today. But speaking of how it goes, there are some updates regarding some NFL players, past and present injuries. Dak Prescott listed as obviously out with that thumb remanufacturing, I guess you want to call that. He's having his stitches removed before tonight's game in the Meadowlands, Chris. It's surgically repaired right thumb, not going to be playing anytime soon. You have to have flexibility in that. And we know that Cooper Rush is a starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, who led them to a second win for Cooper Rush as a starting quarterback. How do the Giants look to you versus how the Cowboys have been playing by the skin of their teeth without their starting quarterback?
The Dallas Cowboys have played surprisingly well. One of the reasons they played so well is because rookie Tyler Smith, their first-round pick out of Tulsa, currently has the number one grade for an offensive tackle according to Pro Football Focus. And I didn't expect him to hold Trey Hendrickson in check that entire game once Prescott was out. I thought Shaq Barrett won some hurries last week, but he did a fantastic job adjusting to the line of scrimmage and handling business in week 2 to make sure Cooper Rush could fill in and be in a position to succeed. I thought Elliott and Pollard did a nice job as well, taking pressure off of Rush, allowing him to just manage this game and do what needed to be done to beat the Bengals. And now he gets a tough test, the New York Giants, their first whiteout of the year on Monday Night Football. How do you feel about that?
That's actually quite interesting you should mention that, because Pollard is listed as out. He is inactive, so he will not be in this game. Zeke Elliott's a full go, to my understanding, so you're going to have to see a heavy dose of CeeDee Lamb on the opposite side. And the problem with that is that you've seen Cooper, who goes over to Cleveland and decides to sign a deal, very productive for the Browns. Well, they don't have that cushion by having Cooper there. They're going to have to rely on the running game. They're going to have to rely on play action. They're going to have to be very deceptive on the offensive side of the ball and to get that ball out in a timely manner in order to keep moving the chains against a very opportunistic and up-and-coming Giants defense. This is at home. This is not a game to take lightly. This is in the NFC East, to say the least, and not to be confused with the NFC least, because this is the NFC East. I know last year was a little bit different, not exactly what you thought it would look like this year, as we know the Eagles in the NFC East are now at 3-0, which is kind of mind-blowing for some, but of course Eagles fans clearly will tell you the opposite being true. Miami, Tua Tagovailoa, a guy who basically went down. It looked as if it was a fallen and I can't get up. Well, he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have gotten up at all. It was a concussion. He fell backwards. His head fed off of the turf after bouncing on it. And in the attempt of getting up, looked as if he was coming home staggered after a very large keg party, as it were, and ultimately had no business being able to get up and get back on his feet. the NFL is investigating this situation of Tua and him being able to play by halftime to go into the second half being the starting quarterback. Apparently, he was able to clear all the protocols of having concussion. Chris, have you heard of this before? I mean, do players typically find a way to clear concussion protocol heading into halftime and playing in the second half? Is this something that you've seen?
This is unheard of. And initially, I heard it was a back injury, which is probably why I'm a little bit puzzled about him being placed on concussion protocol, because it looked like a back injury at first. His leg was hobbling. You couldn't tell if he was at a Dolphins game, if he was, or if he was at
Could
an
have been at a
Alabama
concert.
frat party. Could have been at a concert too. Could have been at an Alabama frat party. We could keep going on and on. I'm sure the Alabama QB room, because Hurts was working hard throwing reps with Smith while they were still in college. So I'm not going to name names. That's not really appropriate of me. Coach Saban will look at me very sternly, wagging his finger with Deion Sanders and the half-leg duck in the
like the
background.
Dikembe Mutombo.
Oh, yeah, that's a great commercial for State Farm. That's a fantastic ad. But back to the Dolphins-Bills game. This was a game where Buffalo had the ball for over 70% of the time in the first half and the second half. Miami's defense, I thought, was phenomenal. I gave the Player of the Game award to Xavier Howard, but Javon Holland had a Pro Football Focus grade of over 90.1. He's only 22 years old. And right now, Waddle and Javon Holland are probably the two players from that 2021 draft class that are the only ones in position to get extensions. I still think there's room for improvement with Jalen Phillips, but it seems like his pass rusher teammate Melvin Ingram's made more big plays this year. You go back to the Patriots game, he had the fumble. He was able to force some fumbles in this game and sack Josh Allen as well.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And again, when you look at the Miami Dolphins, Tua's just been playing out of his mind. And it's if Nick Saban had a 30-minute call with each one of these quarterbacks saying, you can play better. I know you can play better. Be better, play better, be a better version of yourself. Well, clearly that seems to be the case. And enough so to keep Tua Tagovailoa back under center in the second half of this game. Which they ultimately just blew the doors. Well, not really the doors off of the Bills, but it was a shootout as everybody expected it. I picked the Dolphins to win this game only because Josh Allen wasn't able to really get the job done throughout the fourth quarter. And we know we'd seen the opening, day game against the Rams. They stuck it to him really, really well with solid quarterback play, some play action. Defense stepped up huge, but not in this game. This was something that was just separated by 3 points or fewer. This is probably the game of the week, in my opinion, for both of these teams. Do you think that the Bills will find the way around getting back to where they've been accustomed to playing at a higher level than what we've seen against Miami?
Yeah, this was the game of the week for me as well, because there's only 2-0 teams playing against each other, and my favorite team growing up was the Patriots. I know the Patriots and Steelers have a lot of history. I get a lot of flack for that here in Pittsburgh, but looking at the Dolphins and the Bills, the Buffalo Bills entering this game, they were the number one team in my power rankings. I think everybody in the country had them at number one because of how they dismantled the Rams and Titans so easily. Even if you pick the Chiefs to win the AFC, just the way they played those first 2 weeks, it's hard not to put them at number one. But, the Dolphins just had the execution for Miami was just better. Bills fans want to point out it was the injuries in the offensive line or the injuries in the secondary or the injuries at defensive tackle. And while that's a fair point, Josh Allen threw 400 yards, avoided any interceptions, and the Bills still couldn't find a way to win. And that's really the bottom line when you look at this game.
Well, someone likes to chime in and put their address up there for whatever reason. I don't know if this is like a paid promo for them or not, but Guyana Roberto out of San Jose Road in San Jacinto, Pangasinan in the Philippines. I think I pronounced that right. I have no clue. I'm not going to bother trying to decipher that. And Farid Gojar, good job. Thank you very much for the acknowledgement. To your point, I believe that when you look at the Miami Dolphins, I think this team is for real on both sides of the ball. This is not a one-dimensional, standard run-of-the-mill Dan Marino team or a Don Shula undefeated Dolphins. This is not those Dolphins. This is a newly revamped contender in the AFC East. So we've seen the New England Patriots go on to win this division multiple times. We know Mac Jones is dealing with a high ankle sprain. He's a day-to-day or maybe even a week-to-week, depending on what the coach's interpretation is. But as of right now, Mac Jones not feeling very well with a bad ankle in a high ankle sprain. And I know what that feels like, and it's not comfortable at all. But I think the Dolphins are certainly on the right track here in more ways than one. They did acquire Cheetah from the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC, kept him in the AFC by picking him up. I think they made not only the best decision they could have done with Jason Waddle on the opposite side of that ball, but these guys are firing on all cylinders offensively. But when you look at the defense, again, a very opportunistic, revamped, revised defense. Is this team for real on both sides of the ball, or is this just something that we're seeing in I'd say 11-7 type of season for the Miami Dolphins?
Well, 11-7 would be 11-6 and a wild card loss if we're being technical. But I'm not being technical right now. This is a team I thought they could go 12-5 in the preseason, but I had them losing to Baltimore and Buffalo. So now there is an outside possibility that both the Bills and Dolphins go 14-3. And in that scenario, if the Bills won the rematch, they'd get the division. Whereas if the Dolphins win the rematch, the division's theirs. So there is a lot for both of these teams to play for moving forward. And the Bills head to Baltimore next week. Both of those teams have some injuries. But the Dolphins hardly get any rest. And they get Cincinnati on Thursday night on Amazon Prime. If you don't have Amazon Prime, go out and get it. You can get the NFL games. You can get the pregame shows. You can get the you get the next-gen stats. You can even catch up on old favorite shows of yours during your free time. I'm like Jack Reacher, or they have old episodes of Alias on Freevee or whatever, but that's not the point. The point is you need Amazon Prime to watch the rematch of Tua Tagovailoa and Joe Burrow. First meeting between the two men since Alabama was number 1 and LSU was number 2, I believe, Rudy. That was a big game back in the day, 3 years ago.
That was absolutely huge. Yes, and good morning, Vilma Kamaning. Good morning, and to us, good evening, especially those on the East Coast. And for those that aren't on this coast at all, good afternoon or good evening to you. You know what? Always great reruns on Amazon. I think more importantly, this game in question, it's going to be good. And I don't mean it's not going to be great. It's going to be good. When I say good, I mean maybe they'll find a way to actually protect Joe Burrow inside of the pocket. He was the most sacked quarterback last year, 51 sacks. This year, almost on a trend to get back to that 51. I don't know that the adjustments in the offseason on the offensive line with some addition by subtraction guys were really the right thing to do. Maybe drafting a couple of guys here and there probably would have been their best bet. And I know you don't want to stick rookies in a first-year campaign, but if you want to get back to the big game, sometimes you have to make big game decisions on a real-time schedule in order to get these guys acclimated to a system where they need to feel comfortable in to protect Joe Burrow's blind side. So we're going to see what this team is like. I think the Dolphins are for real, to be honest with you. I look at how Tua's playing. I look at situational football moves. I like his decision-making processes in and outside of the pocket. The acquisition of Cheetah was solid. Jason Waddle's having a pretty decent year so far. I think that the Dolphins, I didn't have them winning the AFC East. I believe that it's going to, as you stated, the Bills and them are going to neck and neck. Now, if the rubber match happens, the Bills end up going back to win this one, it could swing in the Bills' favor to win the AFC East, but barely. But I still see the Miami Dolphins as a playoff contender getting in right behind Buffalo if for some reason they end up winning this match within the division.
Agreed,
so we're going to find out how that will actually work out. This is Rudy Reyes on Today's California, joined by Chris Ransom of Draft Utopia. You find him at Draft Utopia on Twitter. You can go to draftutopia.com. Chris?
Yeah, thank you for the promotion, Rudy. And I do have all the NFL game recaps typed. I finished the final write-up right as we started this call. So And Kenny Clark, I thought, was a pleasant surprise in the Green Bay-Tampa Bay game. But we had a commenter from San Jose. So what area of California is closer to San Jose? I know this person's in the Philippines, but we're not going to mention that. What area is closer to San Jose, California? Because I think that's a perfect segue for either the Chargers-Jaguars game or the 49ers-Broncos game. Since you're the host, I'm going to let you take your pick between the two. We'll break down both games in the next 13 minutes or whatever time we have left.
You have San Francisco, which is not too terribly far away from San Jose. And then I'm in Fresno in the Central Valley, which is probably a better part of 3 hours, give or take, away from San Jose. Depends on which way you want to go. And if you want to do some sightseeing, that's another story. Yeah, I look at this season and think to myself, man, there are some teams that are really having some hard up bad luck right now. When I say bad luck, opposite of the ones that are doing fantastic in the AFC East or those teams that are on a winning streak, I look at the Chargers and I'm thinking to myself, I cannot believe the laundry list of guys that are on this list. You have Rashawn Slater on the left tackle, suffered a ruptured bicep tendon. That is not something to play around with. Of course, they lost heavily, 21-10, I believe, and expected to miss the rest of the season. He's an absolute stud, Pro Bowl type of guy. I don't know that Perkins is going to be able to play at his level. I don't think he has the athleticism that Slater has, so he's going to be a pretty hard miss. And then you look at Jalen Guyton, wide receiver for the Chargers, tore his ACL in that game as well. So a very costly one. And then one that's not so costly, but perhaps one you need to really look at is Joey Bosa dealing with a groin injury. And Coach Staley described it as a week-to-week situation, which, I don't know, I consider that more of a day-to-day versus a week-to-week. Only because day-to-day, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is he stretching? Is he not stretching? What type of workouts can he do versus what he can't do? So there's a lot of variables there. Chargers just basically demoralized at home against the Jaguars. And I don't use that word lightly. I don't even use it predominantly in any given language, but they just got hammered by the Jaguars. And it wasn't even close. 2-touchdown lead. And they ultimately had a 38-10 loss. It was just absolutely brutal. And we were talking about Justin Herbert offline in that this is a rib injury. This isn't anything to take lightly. We're talking about cartilage surrounding your ribs to protect them. And as many times as he was hit, as often as he's been hit, you're missing guys on the offensive line. This is a recipe for disaster, and I believe Justin Herbert should be the guy to make the call as to whether or not he starts. But at the same token, he's not in decision of that, Chris. It should be Staley, whose ultimate job is to make that call at a game-time decision methodology to say, you know what, we want to start this guy or we shouldn't start this guy due to potential repercussions of not having him under center. Was this a good move or a bad move by Staley to continue him being under center in this game, despite them losing?
Yeah, they were down 31-10 after the third quarter, like you stated, and they lost Rashawn Slater on the field goal drive where the Chargers got their final points of the game. They lost both in the first quarter. They didn't have J.C. Jackson or Keenan Allen heading into this game. Corey Linsley's another inactive is starting at center as well. So just looking at the Chargers right now, I look at this Justin Herbert situation. It kind of reminds me of the 2 seasons where Baker Mayfield played through injuries with the Browns. I know that's not the best analogy to use because Justin Herbert has a far better arm and he has got way more big playability than Baker ever had. No offense to Baker Mayfield or anything he's accomplished, but that's just the bottom line from what we've seen from Herbert in the first 2 years of the league. And Herbert didn't really have much of a supporting cast as a rookie. He had to pretty much carry the team. And then when his supporting cast got better, you saw flashes of consistency, flashes of potential, and flashes of a quarterback that might be able to get you to the playoffs. This year he's had those injuries, and he hasn't really shown that ability to lead with a weaker supporting cast like he did his first 2 years. I don't know if it's him or if it's a medical issue. My guess is it's probably a medical issue because he wouldn't be playing this bad if he were fully healthy.
No, not at all. And we've seen this last year on a playoff clinching game against the Las Vegas Raiders, where this was a shootout. And if the Raiders had won, the Chargers were in the playoffs. If the Chargers had lost, they're still in the playoffs. So it wasn't as if the Chargers had anything to lose, but I think they wanted to flex their muscle to find out exactly how good Herbert is. And boy, did we. It was probably one of the best games in the AFC in that week. In my opinion, I look
that
at
may have been the game of the year because it ended on a bang, and it's like Herbert could have just taken the tie and both the Raiders and Chargers get in, but because the Raiders won and because the Chargers were flexing their muscle, they kind of got cocky thinking they could win it. That just came across as, you know what, this is personal, this is war, we're going to end things and go to the playoffs, and because of that, Pittsburgh got in by the nail of a pinky. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but that's how close it was.
A sliver of a nail off the pinky, I think.
Sliver of a nail off the pinky. Yeah, that's a better way to reword that. But, you know, that's how close it was last year. And it felt like there were a lot of teams, the Colts mainly with the Jaguars and the Chargers were the two teams that were talented enough to maybe pull an upset. And both of them struggled to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they did. They definitely did. And the Raiders are certainly not suspect to that. 2 years removed. This year they're 0-3. So they're down and out in the AFC West. When we believed, and of course maybe the addition of Devontae Adams was a little inflated in regards to Derek Carr being able to get the ball out of his hands in a timely manner and make it accurate. And we've seen Devontae Adams and Derek Carr, connect in the end zone for a touchdown. But at the same token, this is not, again, the same Raiders team as we've seen 4 years ago. And in all due respect to Derek Carr, I just don't believe that he's the guy that you need under center. It was a 3-year extension for Derek Carr. I don't know that it was. I mean, obviously, the numbers were good. The cap hit wasn't that bad. But when you're a quarterback and you're the starting one under center and not being able to complete those passes to a very tall, lengthy, athletic wide receiver, you have to question yourself and look at yourself in the mirror the next day and say, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? Is Derek Carr the guy under center needed for Las Vegas, or do they really need to look into the draft to acquire a quarterback? Because they did have Mariota, who's now starting for the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC. So clearly the AFC does nothing to do with contending with Mariota at all, unless they play in a Super Bowl or whatnot. But do the Raiders find a way to look at a quarterback heading into the 2023 NFL draft?
I think it depends on where they finish, because the thing I looked at last night when doing the research is there are quarterbacks in a really deep 2020 draft. It's talent enough where you may get a long-term upgrade over Derek Carr. But there's also other guys that are 23, 24, guys like Will Levi, Kentucky, Richardson, Florida, and Hendon Hooker, Tennessee, that are more along the lines of projects. But if you get a top 2 or top 3 pick and Bryce Young or CJ Stroud's within striking distance and they continue to play at a high level, I'm not sure if you can keep Derek Carr, because cutting Derek Carr saves $29,250,000 in cap space, Rudy. That's enough to draft one of those quarterbacks and get Bryce Young, the guy who recovered a fumble and emasculated you in overtime through free agency, because he is in the final year of his rookie deal. And I'm surprised Arizona chose to extend just the safety. Justin Harris, it's not Budda Baker. It's the other safety next to it. Might be Justin Bethel, but Byron Murphy's a really good cover corner. So the fact that the Cardinals didn't extend him after he had 10 deflections on the final year of his rookie deal really surprised me, because he's the guy on Arizona's secondary that's been talked about the least. Everybody else in that secondary has given up at least 1 or 2 big plays, at least, if we're just counting the preseason and so far in the first 3 weeks. That's your biggest asset in the secondary, and you're just going to let him walk the way you let Chandler Jones walk? I don't know. I don't get what Arizona's doing.
Well, Kingsbury's going to have to make a real strong decision. He's going to have to flex his own power and do his own decision-making process with the front office. Say, you know what? We have Kyler Murray. I don't think Kyler Murray's the guy in Arizona. I personally have never cared for Kyler Murray there in Arizona. I don't believe that he'll be there in the next 3 years at least. They could trade him off and get someone who's younger, more for some draft picks. I mean, there are other teams out there that could use a guy like Kyler Murray. I just don't know that him and Kingsbury are on the very same page. It doesn't appear that they are based on the game that I was watching. And Kyler Murray can only handle so much scrambling out of the pocket until he gets nailed to a point where it knocks him unconscious. And we can have that conversation about, Lamar Jackson, even though he's leading the league in touchdown passes and yards, and no one's talking about him at all. Everybody wanted to draft him as a running back, and no one would ever take a chance on Lamar Jackson, 32nd overall to the Ravens.
Because when I'm evaluating quarterbacks, I try to look at how many receivers they're staring at before they make a throw. Can they complete the pass to try to gauge the quarterback's progressions? I saw 6 progressions with Mahomes. I saw 2 with Allen after Iowa, but I saw 5 by the time it's bowl game. So I was thinking, okay, his progressions are a project, but at least he's coachable. Lamar, I actually saw him make up to 6 progressions and complete a pass at Louisville. Kyler Murray may have the best arm in the NFL. He may have the best legs in the NFL. But I always saw him as a one-read, take-off, and run quarterback. I think I had him ranked 58 out of every player in the 2019 NFL draft. Even though he won the Heisman, I felt like he was a high-floor, low-ceiling player. But at some point, the arm talent and the legs are only going to get you so far.
Well, not only that, but he doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Yep. No, you're right. And he doesn't follow any of his progressions. He doesn't follow his checkdowns. It's not as if there aren't anybody. There's no wide receiver or tight end within the vicinity. He's always looking for the big throw. He's looking for the massive one, the touchdown throw, or the massive first down gain, after catch. He's just not the guy that's going to give you the durability of a full game being under center, because he's just not wired that way. I don't know that Kingsbury's going to be able to figure that out with Kyler Murray, to be quite honest with you.
If a team had offered me 2 years of first-round picks and 3 years of second-round picks for Kyler Murray, I would have been like, all right, it was nice to have you, Kyler. It was great to get to know you, but we're moving on. See ya. I would have to.
Absolutely. And you know what? Someone who's desperate could very well do that. And we've seen desperate teams make desperate moves. And Cleveland obviously is one of them with the debacle surrounding Deshaun Watson. That's another topic for another show that we don't have time for.
To get Watson. We don't have time to dive into the Watson details, but
that's a whole other animal.
There's a team that would have given up 2 first-round picks and 3 years of first-round picks to get Kyler Murray. Heck, I could even have seen Seattle make a move for Kyler Murray after they traded Russell Wilson. And
Kyler Murray, a poor man, Russell Wilson.
If Arizona had traded Kyler Murray to a rival team, can you imagine how much drama that would have caused? It would have been great for the league.
It would have been great for the league, and maybe not as great for Kyler Murray. But again, that is all dependent on Kyler Murray. And again, one of those things that I really knocked Kyler Murray for was the lack of maturity. Not something that I find very esteemed by any quarterback in the National Football League. You want to scrub your social media accounts with no resemblance, anything to do with the team that drafted you. Nothing to do with the team that's willing to give you the monies that you believe you deserve, that you think that you deserve. But the team needs to evaluate that to make that determination whether or not you do truly deserve it. That's another show. However, I know this. Going back to Staley and Herbert, Staley hasn't been faced with this type of dynamic since he since he's been the head coach of the Chargers. The problem that I have is that you have to provide him with solid protection. He's a pocket passer. Yeah, he does have wheels, and we know that he can run. But when you have 300 some odd, extremely athletic, high-end linebackers and edge rushers chasing you, you can't do that on every single play. We've had that discussion online and offline. We know Herbert's tough.
Rashawn Slater's pretty hard left tackle to replace. He didn't give up any sacks in 2019 before he opted out due to COVID. I think I gave him a 97 out of 99 for a potential grade, which is like a blue chip left tackle type of grade. So that's not a guy you're going to replace on the roster. It doesn't matter who you sign, who you trade for. Even if you get another good backup for depth, you're not going to replace a guy like Slater. So the Chargers have to figure out a solution moving forward, because you have a former Rams defensive coordinator and Brandon Staley as your head coach, and you have a former quarterback coach / offensive coordinator in Joe Lombardi, who failed once as coordinator with the Detroit Lions, went back to New Orleans. Now he's getting a second chance as coordinator. And Stafford failed under Joe Lombardi, and you have to wonder if there needs to be a replacement for Joe Lombardi if the Chargers can't get this together after the season, because the way they played, I could see both Staley and Lombardi getting canned if this continues. I think Lombardi's done for either way because of his resume, because he failed once as an offensive coordinator, and because of all the mess that's happened with the offense this year. I think the Chargers are getting a new offensive coordinator regardless of what transpires, but right now they just have to do enough to keep Staley's job alive and try to get through this grind of a season, because it's not going to be easy for the Chargers. Anything to add to that, Rudy?
No, it's not going to be easy for the Chargers at all. It's just going to get even worse as the season goes on, especially if they continue to play Herbert at the level of where he needs to play, where his accuracy is looked at and scrutinized based on his mobility. And if you got a rib fracture, man, being able to turn in any degree, that's difficult. That is extremely difficult. With rib cartilage injuries, with pressure on one side, I just don't see it. Best solution, sit him for 3 games, see how he is week to week. We talked about this offline, and it's really about him for the long term, not for the here and now, not for the short term. We talked about TJ Watt being the same comparable guy, means so much of the defensive side of the ball for Pittsburgh, yet not going to have him till October. And he's sitting out the entire time, so that way he can heal. Now, I understand there are different muscle groups, and those injuries are a little bit worse than others and so on, but we're talking about healing time. Strictly healing time. You're going to need to put Herbert on the shelf with the next to the elf and recognize that this is not going to happen. We're not going to go anywhere unless we let him heal. And that's really what's needed. So Staley's going to have to figure it out. Now, whether they do a tight end bunch, whether there's a tight end slot for blocking that is going to, help offset not having Slater, that remains to be seen. They have a grip of tight ends who are very good at blocking, 2 more better than the other. However, they're going to have to make some moves sooner than later in this season in order to salvage it and prevent them from going down with the ship in 2022.
Yeah, the Chargers have a lot of offensive depth. They have offensive depth at receiver, tight end, and running back, which is a big reason why people pick them to make the playoffs. Some people even pick them to challenge and defeat the Chiefs for the division. I'm not going to name names. We don't have time for that. But I look at the Chargers. They've got Eckler. They've got Joshua Kelly. They cut Larry Roundtree in training camp. They still have Sonny Michel, and they have 4th-round pick Isaiah Spiller. You're 4 deep at running back. Maybe run some 2 running back sets with 2 different running backs like the Browns do with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. The NFL's a copycat league. Maybe if you did that, you could try to take some pressure off Herbert being run heavy, because you have depth at tight end with Trey McKitty, Durham Payne when he comes back from his injury, and you also have their starting tight end, Jared Cook. Maybe Gerald Everett. Jared Cook was last year's tight end. You have Everett now, I think. But you have you're 3 deep at tight end. You're 3 or 4 deep at running back. I'd be a little bit run heavy if you're going to play Herbert. And if you're not going to play Herbert, then figure out a way to get these backups involved. Chase Daniels in the final year of his contract. Easton Stick, the 2019 6th-round pick from North Dakota State. Probably not going to see him play. But he's also in the final year of his contract. Maybe give those guys an opportunity to step up. See if there's a guy you can extend on a cheap team-friendly deal while this injury heals itself.
Sure, you could put in a 1-year vet min on Chase Daniel if you really want to have that conversation, or you can franchise tag him, and it's not going to affect you in any negative way whatsoever, because that's always a possibility. You can keep franchise tagging him because he is yet to be under center at any extent in order to show his worth and his value, or just add him to a very low cap friendly deal, as you stated. And I'm completely on board with that, because that will help you in the 2023 NFL draft to look for even more depth help. My problem with this is that when you look at the Chargers, you have to keep the defense honest. You can't run the ball on every single play. You can't do this dink and dunk stuff with Justin Herbert. It's not going to fly that way. He is no Mitch Trubisky by any stretch of the imagination. Justin Herbert ranks so much higher, even on PFF ranks above who Mitchell Trubisky was even coming out of North Carolina. And when you come out of, a place like Oregon, it's fast, real speed, real time, run and gun. That's their offense, and that's where he came from. So speaking of quarterbacks that have kind of turned it around, and number one overall draft pick for the Jaguars, man, it's really interesting, because when you look at the Jaguars, you think to yourself, they're just a game or two from taking this division. I didn't even pick them to own this division at all. And by any means, nobody really owns this division as of yet in the AFC South, because you look at the Jaguars, and maybe Nick Sirianni was able to take his team to the playoffs, and that's great and wonderful. And the Eagles are off to one of the best starts, 3-0 since 2022. They have one of the best point differentials in the NFC. But to be honest with you, at first glance, they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender as September closes out. But think about this. Is it a stretch to suggest that Peterson, maybe not the man for the job in Philadelphia, going over to a completely different team and taking a year off to make the decision? You could talk to Sean Payton and have the same conversation as to whether or not he should come back and be that guy. And I think that when you look at Peterson, I think he made the right move. I think Khan made the right move. I think ownership really thought hard and long about this, considering what they had to deal with Urban Meyer. Do the Jaguars win the AFC South? I mean, do they have a shot at this, or am I just spinning wheels?
They do. They do have a shot at this. I think I have the Colts at 8-1 and the Jaguars at 7-10. But it's like right now, if the Jaguars sweep the Colts in Week 6, they can win. They got this. They've got this because they have 2 meetings against the Titans with no Taylor Lewan. They get the Texans in Week 5 at home, and they just have this. They've got the Giants at home. I think the toughest game on their schedule for at least this season, maybe the rest of the year, is the Eagles game against Philadelphia next week at Lincoln Financial. Doug Peterson's reunion with Howie Roseman. That's going to be fun.
That's going to be that's going to be the game of the week right there. That will really put the home, the word home and coming all in one sentence when Doug Peterson finds his way back to Lincoln Financial Field to face off against his former team, the Eagles.
A lot of people are saying Mahomes versus Brady's the game of the week in Week 4.
Nah.
And that may be true, but this is the more fun game, I think. This has to be the more fun game, because we've already seen Brady and Mahomes twice.
Seen him in the Super Bowl, seen him in postseason. It doesn't really surprise me. We already know what these guys are capable of doing. We've seen the debacle that Tom Brady had with the clock expiring, losing the game, trying to put a 2-point conversion together. That's on Tom Brady. I mean, clearly, solely that whole debacle is just absolutely nuts. I mean, and you can't put it on anybody else's shoulders but Tom Brady. How many times has he done this? Right? We're talking going and winning these long drives.
This in his 22-year career. This is like the first time he's ever done this in his 22-year career. It's unreal.
Yeah, well, it goes to show that even though you say that Tigers can't change their stripes, maybe when you're older, maybe you see more stripes than you thought you did at 24 than you do at 44. I don't know. Depends on if you wear glasses or not, like me. We're live on today's California Joe by Chris Ransom, live on the Rude Dog Show, live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Interact, add some comments, do something, would you? We're on here for just a little while longer. We're going to go back to the Jaguars, because I think truly Doug Peterson could potentially, and I'm not going to go on a limb to say he's going to win Coach of the Year hands down. But if he creates a 500 or better season with the personnel that he has right now, considering what Urban Meyer left him, oh my gosh, could be Coach of the Year.
Exactly. And let's say the Dolphins get wild card 1, and their wild card opponent's the AFC South champion. They will beat. The only team that will actually put up a fight against them is this Jaguars squad. I think we can agree on that, because Lawrence beat Tua in the national title. Those two have some history, and I don't see the Titans doing anything without Luan. Colts, I could see the Colts winning the division, but I cannot see them beating Miami's high-flying offense. I think the Titans could, but I don't see them winning the division without Luan the rest of the year. It's like if Tannehill hosted that game, I could see him winning that game just to say F you to Miami for trading him to the Titans. But I don't even think the Titans are going to sniff this division. I think they're going to be competing with the Texans for last place in the division. I think this is strictly going to come down to the Colts and Jaguars. This division is going to be decided in week 6. We're going to know if the Jaguars sweep the Colts and it's their division to lose, or we're going to know if the Colts are going to be gunning the Jaguars for the division based on record as the season progresses. I think this division is going to be decided probably the quickest I think the NFC East's already been decided. It's Philly's division to lose, but the Jaguars, we're going to know by week 6 whether the Jaguars are serious contenders in the AFC South or not.
Right now, they look legit. They're looking as if they're actually playing the part of the spoiler at any point whatsoever, and could spoil the Colts for that matter in the AFC South bid. We don't know. That is so far out there right now. I can't even put my head on a swivel stick and stop it from spinning if that actually does happen. I'm just pointing that out right now. But going back to Peterson, he has done so many great things for this Jacksonville franchise that it hasn't been seen since Jack Del Rio's initial year with the Jaguars, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah. I'm not a fan of Jack Del Rio. Some of his comments, some of the things that he said on social, scrubbing his account, et cetera, not a fan by any stretch of imagination. Doug Peterson, on the other hand, knows how to handle rookie quarterbacks. Ask Carson Wentz. He knows about that. Helped win a Super Bowl ring. Carson Wentz at one time, not that he is that anymore, but we know that he was so efficient on third down in that Eagles offense the year they won the Super Bowl that it was almost insane to think that Doug Peterson can do this with this guy. No, it's not as odd or obscure to think that he can't do it with the quarterback he has right now.
Good offensive line, good supporting cast, and I think the Eagles were like 11-1 or 13-1, and Carson Wentz was in that MVP conversation, and then he got injured, and Nick Foles came in.
Right, exactly. Well, Nick Foles also not the same quarterback as he once was. And again,
Jaguars fans, they'll give you the full scoop on that prior to Peterson's arrival.
That's exactly right. And I'm sure Doug's thanking his lucky stars that he doesn't have him as a backup quarterback there in Jacksonville anymore. I'm just saying.
But you know who does have Nick Foles as a backup? The Colts. It's pretty interesting if something happened to Matt Ryan and Foles ends up starting in week 6. I don't want Ryan to get injured, but I'm just saying it would create an intriguing storyline if it was Nick Foles had to beat the Jaguars to get the Colts this division. That would be an intriguing storyline. But in all seriousness, I don't want anyone to get injured.
I would love to see that storyline. I'm not a fan of injuries whatsoever. And again, teams are taking the hit on their starting list of guys that ultimately should not be sitting down, and maybe some of those guys that actually should be, like the aforementioned Justin Herbert. We look at Lawrence, completed 28 of 39, 265 yards, 3 touchdowns. This guy's been nothing short of stellar. He had 17 interceptions in his rookie year, but he was a rookie. We give all rookies a pass in their first year. Even Ben Roethlisberger got a pass when he started for Maddox, who got injured in a game. And Ben Roethlisberger just decided to do what he did at Miami of Ohio, and that was to tear defenses apart with a very big arm that just got bigger as the years went on. I think you're going to see that even more so with Lawrence because, again, and I've said this before on past shows, Chris, that when you look at what these guys did in college, you have to really think about what game plan you have to work within what they understand at the college level. Now at the NFL level, how does that look? Do coaches game plan for this?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, Rudy, because you look at the 2021 draft, how many quarterbacks from this draft class that went in the first round are going to get fifth-year tenders? Right now, I'd say only 2. Lawrence and maybe Mac Jones if he plays like he did as a rookie in year 3. Maybe. And I'm saying a tender is the ceiling for Mac Jones. I think Lawrence is the only guy that has a legitimate shot of getting that extension after his rookie deal right now. Maybe we disagree, Rudy, but that's probably where I stand.
No, I'm definitely with you. I am definitely with you there. We're creeping up towards starting time here for Monday Night Football. And I want to go over some statistical things that most people may not or may know about heading into week 3, of course, tonight, the last week for week 3, heading into week 4 of the NFL season. That in this upcoming week, teams advance to 3-0, including Miami and Philadelphia. Bigger question is can the New York Giants dominate the Cowboys at the Meadowlands? And if they do, they'll be 3-0 for the first time since 2009. That's a long time ago. That's like in dog years. It's forever.
To put it bluntly, I graduated high school in the year of summer of 2009, and I was at like community college for 2 years. So to put it bluntly, the last time the New York Giants were 3-0, I was a freshman in community college. So that's saying something about the Giants and them not being 3-0 over the years. But
well, it also says something for who Brian Daboll is and what he brings to that system, which by all hindsight being 2020 is exactly what he did with Josh Allen while he was there in Buffalo. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Not on that note, because Daniel Jones looks like a much different QB. He's able to survey the field, get the ball out at anywhere between 2 and 2.5 seconds, which is for him very uncommon. I mean,
yeah,
he's a quarterback
he went the entire first half against the Titans without any turnovers. He went the entire game against the Panthers, who have 3 really good corners. Dante Jackson, J.C. Horn's healthy, and they got C.J. Henderson, the nickel, and they got some nice safeties too. So for Daniel Jones to go the entire 60 minutes without a turnover against the Panthers, that's sort of impressive when you look at it in hindsight. People could say, oh, Daniel Jones is a game manager and pigeonhole him, but to do that against the Panthers is sort of impressive because I think they have a more formidable cornerback tandem than the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe we disagree, but that's fine if we do. But I just think the Panthers
I like the depth.
Have a tougher secondary.
Right. I enjoy and appreciate depth when you acquire guys that are up and coming or guys that have been there, done that. As we see in New Orleans, they went and acquired the Honey Badger in the offseason from the Chiefs. And we've seen what he can and can't do. And, of course, he's getting older like any other player. But when you have depth like a Honey Badger, like J.C. Horn does for New York, you're looking at guys that are learning not only on the road, but learning from their time and experience with other teams. And when you get that and that actually becomes a reality, that means that they're going to be good. They're going to be really good. It's just a matter of time as to how good they can be. Could they be shut down like a Darrelle Revis? Well, that remains to be seen. Are they going to have any type of depth like maybe a Rod Woodson? Well, again, time will tell. But these guys are just going to become that much better. And I really enjoy watching this Giants team play only because I respect the quarterback play that was almost non-existent just a year ago without Brian Daboll. To see what he brings to this club, which just makes this team more exciting and more fun to watch instead of saying, well, it's the same old Giants and they're going to fall apart and we already know what they're going to look like in the fourth quarter. No, this is a new team, new identity, new face. And if they went tonight, they're 3-0.
Bill's assistant GM, Bill's offensive coordinator as head coach. A lot of the things that worked in Buffalo, they're implementing those things in New York. Or New Jersey, I should say. The Giants do technically
close enough.
In New Jersey. But they're in New York. And these next 2 games, they're home. They're home games for the Giants. And they get the Cowboys, and in week 4, they get the Bears and Justin Fields. Maybe the Justin Fields minus David Montgomery. So there is a window of opportunity to start 4-0 heading into your London game with the Green Bay Packers. And if your edge rushers can step up in these next 2 games, you've got a real opportunity to do something special. And even if you lose the Packers, you have breathing room until the end of October with a 4-0 start. Like, win or lose, you go out, you have fun, you do your best, you don't care about the outcome, and I think that makes the Giants dangerous in a sense because teams will underestimate what they can do, and that'll give their younger players confidence.
That's exactly right. You are hitting the nail on the head. And confidence is something that gets spread out. People feel the confidence. They can share the confidence. They bask in the glow of being confident in their respective roles and those respective positions. So I expect this to be almost a near lopsided game. I know Cooper Rush is 2-0 as a starter, but I just believe that the defense for the Giants just is going to be that much better. I just think, just based on what I've seen from the Giants, I know they have Micah Parsons with the Cowboys defense. I understand that, but they don't have major stars, and it's going to take more than just one star for the Giants to make the impact and apply the pressures, get the sacks, turn the ball over, become ball hawks in the secondary, by applying the pressure up front, cutting off would-be lanes, closing those gaps. It's going to be a very detailed game by Brian Daboll. He knows this Bills system well. The Cowboys system well. Everybody's done their research. Now it's time to put up or shut up. And I think that the Giants will do that and quiet the Cowboy crowd that may be in, I don't know, minus audience there at the Meadowlands. But I think the Giants will end up taking it tonight.
Clown World Show. We'll call it the Jerry Jones Clown World Show. I know that's kind of a corny name, but, right now the starting left guard for Dallas is 38, 39.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Peters' defense, Leonard Williams is inactive for this game. So if Jason Peters has the game of his mind, the game of his life at his age, against a backup who's not as good as Leonard Williams, and you attack that hole and Tyler Smith plays well, maybe you have an outside chance to make this close. But I still don't think it's going to be enough to beat the Giants. I like New York in this one.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking New York on that one. Chris, tell everybody where they can find you and where you're at.
Facebook.com/Draft Utopia. You can find our Facebook page, our articles, our content. You can also follow my handle @Draft Utopia on Twitter if you want YouTube videos of the latest and greatest college football prospects, like actual game film, play-by-play. You can go to Draft Utopia's YouTube channel and subscribe there. You can watch some film, drop some comments, and definitely check us out. And I will have the game recaps up. I was going to post them up around 7:30, but the show went a little longer than I anticipated. Nobody's fault. I'm choosing to take ownership and be in the limelight with Rudy because I think that we have great chemistry as podcasters. And, worst case scenario, I could post my game recaps during halftime. That's probably the best time to do it anyway, with the game coming up and everything.
Good point.
It is.
Yeah,
so
you're right. Go follow Chris @Draft Utopia.
We can promote this now, and then I'll post my game recaps on Twitter at halftime. That way,
sounds good to me.
We can promote both of our content, and it won't it won't conflict with the game. I don't, because that's the last thing I want. I don't want this to conflict with the game. Do you watch Manning Cast? It's the last question before we sign off, Rudy. Do you watch the Manning Cast?
You know what? I have not. Now, in all fairness, I want to watch the game. And and I met Peyton Manning, and he's very entertaining. He's a nice guy. He took a photo op with me when nobody else would, so he had taken the time out. I've watched maybe 2 minutes of it, but then I got to go back to the game. So I've watched it for 2 minutes in its entirety. That's it. That's all I have. There's
you might want to take a clip in this. Might want to take a clip in the second quarter if you have a second, because Peyton Manning is going to have Pat McAfee on as his second guest. I think he has 3 guests on the night, so it's either the second or third quarter. Peyton Manning's going to have his former punter, Pat McAfee, on the Manning Cast. That might be entertaining because he's done a good job with College Game Day so far since ESPN added him in that role.
Yeah, he has. I've caught him on that. Matter of fact, he was on Radio Row this past year when the Rams faced off against the Bengals at SoFi, and it was nice to see him in action. So I may check it out. I may do so. Chris, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone. And we'll see you guys real soon. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.